If you're struggling to fit an S-Bend corset, struggle no longer. S-Bend corsets are what we think of when we talk about corsets. That perfect chef's kiss hourglass shape with the notoriously tiny waists that were photoshopped BT dubs. And while fitting corsets can be difficult, in the 17 years I've been making and fitting corsets as a professional costumer, I've developed a tried and true 4-step method that will take you from normal to va-va-voom with minimal stress and heartache. But before we get into the practical application, let's talk about why fitting S-Bend corsets is different from fitting other corsets, stays, and bodies. S-Bend corsets, otherwise known as straight front corsets or military front corsets, are a departure from the earlier Victorian styles. They were thought to be much healthier for the wearer. The bust line of the corsets is much lower than the earlier models, so your bust sits at its natural point if you don't have a large cup size, giving the body that thrusty, pigeon-breasted look that is so iconic. So when you fit one of these, you want to make sure that the top of your corset isn't sitting up over the top of the apex of your bust, like this one is. It should be slightly under the apex, or if you're going for an underbust version, completely under the bust. Mine is a mid-bust, so it's going to hit me right at the apex, and I'll talk about why I picked this particular pattern when we actually make the final corset. All these lights with the fan off is hot, y'all. While some padding was happening in earlier eras, in the Edwardian era, we see it explode. When you fit your S-Bend, your main focus is going to be on fitting the waist. Unless you're already hourglass shaped and super curvy, more than likely the bust and or the hips is going to be too large for you. But unlike in other eras, you want that room, because from here on out, it's all about the proportions, baby. So when you pick your size, you want to pick it solely on your waist measurement. And if you're super squishy like yours truly, you want to pick it based on the size your waist comfortably corsets down to, not the size it is without a corset. Unless you don't want to reduce your waist, that's up to you. Unless the pattern says that the finished measurements are smaller than the measurements on the pattern chart, like Ora Lynn's Amelia Waspy, which specifically states that there is a 2-inch waist reduction included. So in that case, you'd pick the waist measurement equal to how much you reduce minus the 2 inches, if that makes sense. Now that you know what you're looking for, let's get into the first step. My personal least favorite, the pattern and math stage. The paper and math stage, making your regular changes to the paper pattern before making a mock-up. These are the things you always end up changing in any given pattern. For example, lengthening or shortening the waist, adjusting the cup size, arm size, etc. All right, y'all know the drill, and boy, do we have some math to do. First thing to point out, there are 6 pieces to this pattern. These 2 pieces are just facings, and you don't need them unless you are making this out of a single layer of coutil, but if not, then you don't need them. This is the back panel. This is the front. Center front is here. This piece goes here. Note that at the top, the bust is the same width as the back. That's not really a true case for anyone if you've got any bit of tissue up at the front. First math then is to measure the top line of the corset to figure out how much space you need to add for your yabos. For me, that's a full inch on each piece, and because my bust is so disproportionately full, I've opted to add an inch to the top as well as the seam edge. You may only need to extend at the seam, or you may need to extend up even more, or none at all if you are normally proportioned. On the side bust piece, we're going to split the inch between both seams. The important thing here is to make sure you grade down to the same point as the front bust so the seam length remains the same. The final thing I need to do before cutting the mock-up is take in the back, because mine is quite narrow. So let's take in it at the waist and extend it up through the top on the back/side back seam. If you hate math as much as me, that is the worst hurdle over and done with. Yay! And now that it's done, we can get to the next step, the fun fart. Fun fart. Yes, that's exactly what I just said. Hang on. That's never fun. The fun part, the first mock-up stage. Things I did not anticipate. 1, this being a very feasible and workable mock-up. I thought there were going to be a ton of problems. I also did not expect that this gap would be so small right at the waist. Remember that I cut 2 inches smaller than what I normally corset down to. In this right now, I am corseted down to what I normally corset down to, and there's only about a 1/2 inch gap here. My lacing gap is pretty uneven, but this is gonna take less work than this up here. So I did not anticipate this being as comfortable and as successful as it is first round. That feels really good. That comes with experience, unfortunately. I did slightly suspect that the amount of space that I added in the bust was going to be too much. However, the name of the game for S-bends for every body is fit the waist and then worry about adjusting the tops and the bottoms with the right measurements in mind. So I'm gonna take this off and let's make some adjustments. That changed the lacing gap significantly and looks better from the front too. But the cups are just too big now to go without any boning but the seam, so let's add a few. Now to neaten our lines a little and transfer them to the other side. All right, try on number 3. The boning in the bust changed everything. I did experiment, and on this side I did straight diagonal lines, and on this side I did the curvy ones that I drew on myself in the previous footage. This side is fitting me a lot nicer than this side, so the curvy is going to be the way to go, even though it's much harder to transfer that way. I am still getting quite a bit of wrinkling at the waist. Normally that's an indication of it being too tight or the waist not being in the right spot. The waist is in the right spot. When I bend, it's breaking right where the smallest part is. I think in this particular case, it might be a little too tight, but I am not feeling any discomfort. Actually, I am quite comfortable right now, more comfortable than any of my other corsets are, if I'm honest. So I think a lot of the waist wrinkling is coming down to materials. We're using the cheap mock-up materials, the cotton duck, the cotton sheeting, the plastic zip ties. All of the real curvy boning channels will have spiral steel in them. I think that's going to change a lot. So we'll live with the wrinkling for now. Let's get everything else fixed. I say this at some point every time I make a corset, but that's because it bears repeating. A little goes a long way in corsetry, and so when you're fitting something like this, you want to make one small change, test it, then make another change and test it. Don't try and change everything at once, because every little change will affect everything else. So even though I have a list of things I want to modify next, we're going to do one thing first, and that is to take the bust in a little. This is exactly what I was talking about. So before I was thinking that the top of the corset was way too tall and I was gonna have to take a good inch of it down, but taking in the extra space in the bust has pulled it closer to me and is now almost exactly where it should be. I'm still debating maybe taking it down by just a skoge, but I don't want to take it down too much because this is supposed to be a mid-bust corset. That's the reason I bought this pattern. I want to be able to bend over in this and not spill all the spaghetti. Since the waist is pretty much where it's going to be for now, we're going to start working with the hips. They fit fine, but there is an exaggerated curve in here. Like there's extra space, as you can see, to put some padding in there and give it a more exaggerated look. But because of the way that it curves right now, it's not achieving its full potential. So we're gonna release the hips out a little bit, give it just a little bit more space so that I can get some padding in there. Measure out the distance you want and remember the number. Apparently, I went through all that and forgot to make the change on the mock-up. Will this bite me in the butt when I get to the final corset? Only time will tell. That's about as far as we can get in the first mock-up, so let's mark all our changes on the paper pattern and prep for the third stage of fitting. This is my favorite method, cutting right on the stitch line so you can line it up perfectly with the original pattern. One of the reasons, but not the only, that I like corset patterns without seam allowances. Once you've made as many changes as you can, it's time to move on to step 3. I always transfer my changes and do a second mock-up on every corset I make. Corset materials are expensive. Couture runs like $20 to $30 a yard, which are silk prices. So if you've messed anything up or forgotten to add something, it's much better to do another round and figure it out on the cheap stuff than to figure it out when you use the good stuff. This fitting is going surprisingly well, and for once I feel like maybe I don't need to do a second mock-up. But specifically for this video, so you can learn the process, I'm gonna go ahead and take the time to do it. So if you're enjoying this video or finding it helpful, please consider giving it a thumbs up and saying hello in the comments. That will help others find this video and hopefully help them achieve their goal of getting a perfectly fit S-Bend corset. And if you have the means to contribute financially, I do have a Ko-fi page, which I've linked below. My supporters over there are amazing and I appreciate you all so much. Mock-up number 2. Let's do a spin. Still getting a little wrinkling on the fashion fabric, but it's still muslin, so even though it's a better quality than the other one, it's still gonna wrinkle a little bit. That's okay, I'm not worried about it. The big wrinkling that was happening in the back, the crumpling is gone, and that was the important thing to be worried about. So usually when I put my lacing strips on, I don't put boning on the back boning channels of the actual corset, but I went ahead and did that, and I think that made a huge difference between that and making sure everything was on grain. So I'm pretty sure I'm happy at least with the length of this as it is, but I'm gonna wear it for just a little bit, work on something else, and make sure that I'm confident, because as soon as I buy that busk and as soon as I buy that metal boning, the length of this is set. Yes, I could cut it and tip it if I wanted, but I don't want to do that. So wear it, let's see how it does. I got really frustrated yesterday. We are at that point in the year where I can no longer keep my apartment at a comfortable temperature during the day. I live on the 3rd floor and my electric bills are insane in the summertime, partially because I have vaulted ceilings and it's hard to keep it cool in here. Anyway, so I got frustrated yesterday because it was just too hot in here. I put it on again today and walked around, and really the only discomfort I'm feeling right now is because the boning is sticking out and scratching me all over the arms. So I think I'm gonna call it, which means we're not gonna make any adjustments from here, and we're going to figure out which of these boning channels will take the zip ties and which of the boning channels will need steel. Tell me you made notes at the mirror without telling me you made notes at the mirror. For corsets specifically, I split the bones between plastic, spiral, and straight steel. This center front portion here that's X'd off is where the steel busk will go. There aren't hard set rules for this, but generally you want to put spiral steel in the curved channels for flexibility. You don't need steel in bodies or stays at all. But in corsets, the one fast rule is having straight steel on either side of your grommets on the back. Otherwise, you're compromising the integrity of the structure and will get a whole slew of problems. Ask me how I know. I also like to have a piece of straight steel on either side of the busk in the center front, or in this case, I'm going to do 2 pieces. So flat steel at the center front and back, spiral on the curvy bits, and then we'll use plastic for the rest. Meanwhile, now you see it, now you don't. Freedom! Time to order from wa-wa. No turning back from here. The 4th and final step is nigh. It is the final fitting stage. This is when your corset is based together with the actual fashion fabric, the actual interfacing, and the actual boning. This is where all the fine tuning happens. It is the most important part, because your mock-up fabrics are going to behave differently than your final fabrics unless you're made of money and can use the final fabrics as your mock-up. In that case, good for you. You always want to go into your corset making process knowing that you still have to modify it before you can finally put everything together permanently. All right, good news and bad news. The good news is I'm very comfortable. Apart from, you know, the boning hurting my underarms, I'm pretty comfortable. I put this on, then I ate a big brunch, and then I sat down for 20 minutes. Why? Because I wanted to see how it would affect the fit. The bad news is I'm still getting quite a lot of wrinkling, and especially in the back, especially on this side, there is an extra piece of boning that needs to go here that I forgot to put in. But if you look at this side, it's better than this side. This one has full boning, so that is a good thing. Unfortunately, I think part of the problem is that the grommets on the back are not exactly put in on the grain, so without completely redoing that last panel, not willing to do that. I think there's always going to be a little bit of pulling in the back. It is at my waist. It's in the right spot. So that is not the problem, and I loosened this quite a lot and I was still getting the pulling. So unfortunately, I think it's a grain issue. That is going to be what it is. I'm going to be zen with a little bit of wrinkling. One thing of note is that not all of the boning is in here right now. I don't have any of the boning along the seams. That should help smooth it out a little bit. I also intend to use synthetic whalebone instead of the zip ties that are in this. That should smooth it out even a little bit more. Okay, so I posted about this over on Instagram, and after talking to somebody who focuses on this particular era, I've learned that you're going to get a fair amount of wrinkling with these long line S-Bends. They need the flossing to keep the boning in place, and it makes sense because they're just so ding dang curvy. So it's not entirely the grain problem, which is so validating. Some of this is inevitable, and some of it will be fixed once we floss the final corset. Also, if you're not already, I would love for you to follow me over on Instagram. While I'm notoriously bad about answering DMs over there, I do tend to be more active over there. And if you like behind the scenes peeks, I post a lot of that, especially in my stories of whatever it is I'm working on at the moment. And I tend to work way ahead of schedule. So you end up getting to see a lot of stuff that you won't actually see on YouTube for several months. Also, I'm planning on doing a little giveaway when I hit 1K over there, and I'm really close. So if you want to be part of that, you know what to do. And with that in mind, I think this is where we're going to leave off because we only have some small final tweaks to do. This was a particularly easy corset for me to fit, but keep in mind that I already have an hourglass shape, so it wasn't so much reshaping me as just moving the flesh into the parts that it's supposed to be. We will be adding some padding in the hips, but as predicted, not necessary for the bust because Dolly Parton. So if you're ready to watch the final video, including all the gorgeous lace and the corset flossing and angsty wrangling of the steel boning in the sewing machine, you can watch this video here. Or if you're watching before that one goes live, did you know I make a dedicated fitting video to every single corset I make on this channel? I've got them all in one handy playlist, and I'd love for you to check out another one. That's about it for me. Thanks for watching. I love y'all, and I'll catch you in my next video.